Welcome back to Science Class Kids. Today we're going to have a two-part assignment. So today's assignment is going to be used on Wednesday and on Thursday. So you're going to have to transfer the knowledge that you have from today's lesson into tomorrow's lesson in order to be successful on this lesson. So you might need to use this video twice, today and Thursday, in order to get this thing knocked out. If you want to continue using the video, that's fine. I'm going to explain the process of what's going on. Today we're going to take a look at celery stalks, specifically for the purpose of what is the function of the stem in a plant. The stem in a plant serves to get water as a transport system all the way up from the roots, up the stem, to the leaves and the flower to help the plant make a new plant. Remember, the main focus of every living thing is to make more of that living thing. So we're going to take a look at 4 days worth of growth in the celery stalk. Not growth, that's the wrong word. Of water transport in the celery stalks. So Miss Todd and I have attached on your Google Classroom or on your Schoology account a paper to operate in Kami. So you're going to have to use your drawing feature today to create a bar graph. You just draw your bar graph in there. You might want to insert a shape if you wanted to. And I'm going to do the bar graph right behind me. So basically the top part of this is going to be you just copying what I've done behind me and making sure you guys set your range and your limits and that kind of thing, and make sure we understand how to operate that. And then we're going to talk about your CER, which is going to be your first writing activity for your science class this school year. So let's just jump right into this thing. So inside of each of these cups, we have blue water. So we just put water in here with food coloring in it. So that way you can see the water go up the plant. So we put this one in here literally today, and we're going to take it out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my ruler to measure from the base of this celery stalk up to where the water line has actually went. And the water line is right there. You can see the water has already started to creep up the celery stalk because you can see the blue from the food coloring is starting to actually move from the roots, which were down here, up the celery. So I'm going to put this down real quick so I can measure it. So I put that down there. I line up the base of my celery at 0, and it looks like this is about 2 centimeters. So I've got the 2 centimeters in my head. So I'm going to come over here behind me, and on my bar graph and on your Kami assignment, you're going to do this exact same thing. So I got to create a range first, and my range is going to be from the bottom of my bar graph up. So I'm going to measure the height in inches or centimeters rather on the left-hand side, and this is day 1. So my first bar graph is going to go right here. My first bar in my bar graph is going to go here. So I'm going to start making my tick marks, and I'm going to establish the height. Now the intervals that we've got going right here, the idea for an interval is to try to create an equal space in between. And I've done a decent job of that. And then you need to label it. So down here, this is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 centimeters. Now you don't have to put the centimeters beside each one because it's got that tag right here for you. So it lets you know that the measurement and the increment that I'm using is in centimeters. Day 1, when I used my ruler and my paper towel to measure that celery stalk, it was up to 2 centimeters. I'm going to use a different color for every day, so that way you guys can see the difference and it's easier to read that bar graph. If you want to, make sure you change the color in your drawing feature to do so as well. So on day 1, the water had transported up that celery stalk 2 centimeters, okay? So as you can see, I've got day 2, day 3, and day 4 over here. And we're going to match that up on the celery stalk, and we're going to put that in there. At the bottom of your Kami assignment, there are 3 questions, okay? As you observe the celery, what do you notice happening? So you should be able to use that bar graph and pull that information. What do you see happening with the water specifically? Question number 2 is going to be what structures allow the change in the celery to take place? So use what we learned last week from the video yesterday. What other parts of the plant are attached to the stalk or the stem that allow that transportation to take place? Okay. Number 3, what do these structures support the plant survival and growth? How do they do that? How do these structures of the stem and that other system that we talked about that's going to be under the ground yesterday, how are those things going to help support the plant's function and growth of this plant? Okay. So I'm not going to answer those. Those are things that you're going to have to pull from last week and some from yesterday and make that happen. So let's look at day 2's growth, and you can see on the video the water line is now up to right here. Okay, let's compare that to the today's, which water line was only to right there. Okay, so pretty good difference in growth. And that's gonna be marked on our bar graph. So let me put this down and measure this one as well. Centimeter side, there it is. All right, so I've got it marked there. It looks like this one is up to, there we go, 6 centimeters. I may have to increase the size of my bar graph. 6 centimeters, okay? So I'm gonna come over here to my bar graph. You guys will insert a new drawing, or you'll insert a new text box or a new shape. So I'm gonna go over to the 6 for day 2, and I'm gonna shade that in. So from day 1 to day 2, the growth of water climbing up that celery stalk was actually 4 centimeters. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it grew 4 centimeters, so the water increased up the stalk. So in 24 hours, the stalk has taken in more water. So you can see that water starting to move up the celery stalk, up the stem. We'll pull day 3 out here. And you can see a really good line right there, pretty good defined line of where the water has actually increased to. And this one is at 8 centimeters. But I'm gonna take the plant up here as I trip over that chair, and you can actually see the blue inside the leaves. So that water has slowly made it up to the leaves in the top of the plant, and you're starting to see the blue, which was in that water, now coming through in the leaf. And that's gonna be in that process from photosynthesis, and you're gonna learn more about that. You learned about that last week in Flocabulary's video. So that's the whole process of the water coming up in those leaves, okay? So now I'm gonna go back here to my chart. I'm gonna grab a different color so you can see a defined difference. This one was at 8 centimeters, which is about right here. I'll draw my bar graph. So day 3 is at 8 centimeters of growth. And as you can see, it looks kind of the same. We went from 2 to 6, from 6 to 8. So our growth wasn't as much here, but it's still increasing up that stalk, up the stem of this plant. And then the very last one, this one has the most roots attached, or the most roots, has more roots attached. I don't know what the correct vocabulary is there. But you see the big root ball down here at the bottom of this one? And this one's all the way up to the top on this plant. So if I were to put that centimeter mark, there it is, the bottom of this one. Okay, yeah, my chart isn't quite big enough. So this one's up at 14 centimeters, so it jumped a bunch there. And the leaves on that plant are almost completely blue. So I'm gonna come over here and actually my chart is actually up to 14, that works out perfect. So I'm gonna go to the very top of my bar graph here and draw that line. And I have 14 centimeters of water growth in that one, okay? So that whole celery stalk right there is completely full. The water has went from the bottom of the root all the way up to the top of the plant. The leaves are blue, and you can really see the function, which is to transport water from the root system up to the leaves, up to the top of the plant, so it can go through that process of photosynthesis, create food for itself, develop a flower, make a seed, and create a new plant. After that, you should be able to answer your 3 questions that are down there at the bottom. However, I'm going to take the last few minutes of this video, and I'm going to talk to you guys about next assignment that's going to happen tomorrow. You see it over here on the left or the right hand side of my board? What is the function of the stem in a plant? That is literally the question that we've been talking about during this entire lab today. Tomorrow, you're going to go through a 3-part process called, it's a writing process called CER, claim, evidence, and reasoning. You can use everything from this video and this chart that I have right here in the video to answer these 3 questions, okay? So your claim is simply 1 sentence, 2 at the max, state what the stem does. So you could start with, the stem of the plant does this. The stem of the plant's function is. And after you've written that down, you're done. Move to the next box. So insert a text box right on the one below that in the evidence tab. The evidence is using the information from this chart to prove to me that what you said in your claim is true. So if you said the job of the stem is to keep the plant taller, and the graph says the plant is taller because it goes up every time. Well, that's not what this graph tells you, so don't put that in. But the information from this graph would prove that if that's what I was measuring was growth over time. But we're looking at the water's level in the stem as it moves up. The very last part of that is the reasoning. And the reasoning is always the hardest part for my kids. It's been the hardest part for my science kids the last 5 or 4 years. Why do the plants need the stem to pull water? Why do they need the stem to be tall? Why do they need the stem? It's basically the whole purpose behind the reasoning of this CER. So why would a plant need a stem? What would happen to a plant if it did not have a stem? Okay, that's what it's looking for, all right? So think about what the function is and how that function helps that plant survive. And in reasoning, you're gonna have a couple of sentences, 3-4 sentences, probably a solid paragraph in the evidence and the reasoning to prove to me that you know what you're talking about.